Welcome in everyone to my Big Ten Week 4 breakdown. I break down every single team's game, outcome, what have you, of the Big Ten Conference. We have a lot to talk about. It was a stacked weekend in terms of marquee matchups. So without further ado, let's dive right in. But before we do, really quick, if y'all could subscribe for me really fast, that would be great. One click of a button down there. It is the best and most efficient way to support the channel and its growth, as well as liking, sharing, and commenting your thoughts down below. Without further ado, now let's dive right in. All right, so we're switching up the style a little bit, dividing the slideshow into two separate parts. So if you guys have tuned in for the other game week recaps, a little bit of a difference there. But anyway, diving right in, Illinois shocking Nebraska on the 400 sellout, a night game on a Friday. This was set up on a tee for Nebraska to win. It was set up on a tee, and they choked away the game yet again. And Illinois, you do have to give them credit. All the attention is on Nebraska and how they choked away the game. Raiola turned 18. Like I posted on X. If you're not following me on X, it's at Big Ten Quick Talk. Real easy to get my instant thoughts on every single Big Ten game. So go follow on X if you have not already. But man, you do have to give Illinois some credit in this game. Luke Altmaier played out of his mind against a pretty darn good Nebraska defense. But the Nebraska defense did have to step up, and they did not play well at all. I think Illinois was more physical than Nebraska. Illinois wanted it more. It just seemed that Nebraska thought that they were going to just take this game, and they didn't. Luke Altmaier did what he had. He threw for 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and threw for 215 yards in the process. Illinois rushing had 170 against a Nebraska front that is considered one of the best in the country and is considered one of the best at stopping the run. Yes, Illinois did fumble the ball twice. Altmaier fumbled the ball once, which, yes, that does need to be cleaned up. But past that, I mean, there were some pretty darn good defensive stops by Illinois. You have to give credit to Illinois. They set Nebraska up in such a bad situation that they could not crawl themselves out of in overtime. I do have issues with Nebraska winning that toss and deferring. They had their defense out there for most of the fourth quarter, and you're going to send them out there again. And yes, Illinois, excuse me, just, went out there and scored in 2 plays. On Nebraska's side of things, Raiola threw for 3 yards shy of 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, and missed the fullback Luke Lindenmeyer on a wide open touchdown play, just overthrew him. And that's what tipped the game, in my opinion. And I mean, yes, he did have to have that one interception. Honestly, in my opinion, it should have been a touchdown, but we'll leave that as it may because it really doesn't matter at this point. Dante Dowdell led the way in rushing with 72, and Dylan Raiola had negative 52 rushing yards. So, yeah, I'm just gonna leave that one as is. That's just all sack yards. He took, excuse me, he took a lot of sacks in that game. Point being, Nebraska did not do enough at the end of the fourth quarter and in overtime to overcome Illinois, and Illinois is a very solid team, and I'll say it again, a very solid team. What I will say on the bright side for Nebraska is that I think that they have one of the best receiver rooms in all of the Big Ten and one of the better rooms in the whole country. Jamal Banks is criminally underrated. Isaiah Nayor gets a lot of the flashy plays and whatnot, but Jamal Banks is an NFL player. Not saying that Nair isn't. He is an NFL player as well. Both these starting wideouts for Nebraska are NFL players, and they will be playing on Sunday next year. I guarantee it, and will probably get picked within the first 3 rounds. Honestly, Nair could probably go in the first round if he continues what he's doing here. 2 touchdowns, long of 44, 22 and a half yards averaging. And then behind him, you have Thomas Fidone, who is really good, and then you have Ja'Cory Barney and Jalen Lloyd, 2 speedsters, and then you throw in there, Janiron Bonner, Carter Nelson, Ramir Johnson out of the backfield. Their wide receiver room is deep and very, very good. On defense, Nebraska just did not do enough. John Bullock led the way with its sack, 9 total tackles. Yes, the number one corner for Nebraska did go out, Tommy Hill, but really they should have played better than what they did. All right, next game that we're going to be looking at. Yeah, Marshall did lose to Ohio State 14-49. I mean, why wouldn't they lose by that much I'm versus Ohio State? Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country, and they put themselves together a JV schedule to start the season. I am really not a fan of this. I hope to create a video in the near future where I detail why I don't like the way we do non-cons here in college football. But Will Howard, yeah, he played great. I mean, everyone played great on this team in this game. Quinshon Judkins went for a buck 75. Travion Henderson went for 75. Egbuka had over 100 yards. Jeremiah Smith had 70. I mean, everyone on this team contributed, and you expect no less from Ohio State. And since it really wasn't that impressive of a win, even though it was 49-14, I'm going to skip over. Indiana beat Charlotte. Indiana is, in my opinion, they need to be reality checked a little bit. They played a JV UCLA team and have beaten up on probably the worst group of five schools in FIU, Charlotte, and then, Western Illinois as an FCS school. So they're going to need a reality check, and coming up for them, it gets even a little bit easier having Maryland at home and going to Northwestern, who was actually a JV team, until they face Nebraska. That's probably their biggest game coming up for a while. They have a very easy schedule to start out. So I think they're going to need to have a reality check, but they're going to look really good going into that Nebraska game. Maryland beat Villanova, not by as much as I thought that they would, but they did beat them by 18 points, and it really wasn't a game. Billy Edwards threw for 330 passing yards, and I mean, that's going to be their offense. That's their offense is going to be that Roman Hemby. He's an okay back, but not really Big Ten built in my opinion. For receiving, Ty Felton led the way again with a buck 60. These guys are really good at passing the ball, but once it comes to Big Ten play, I really don't know about their defense and rushing ability. Then Penn State blew out Kent State. I think everyone knew this was going to happen except for the homers that don't really want to pay attention or like Penn State or, Bowling Green this, Bowling Green that. But Penn State really shut up those people and have fine-tuned their abilities and really put down a beating on them. Coming up, they have Illinois, who is now ranked 19th, jumping up 5 spots. I forgot to add that before. This is going to be a true test night game. Illinois has been through this whole charade before with Nebraska. Night game, the big network coming in, NBC, in a very tough environment. Can they do it again? I mean, I hate to go back to Illinois, but Luke Altmaier looks like an NFL caliber QB if you watch him. Now, don't go down in the comments saying, "Oh, he's not," because you haven't watched him. Everyone that watches him agrees that he looks like an NFL quarterback right now, and he's got some good receivers with him. But back to Penn State is that they also have a quarterback that looks really good, albeit against Kent State, and yes, they are 0-4. So it doesn't really surprise me that Drew Aller's throwing for 300 yards. That's about the bare minimum that they could have done. Bu Pribula got in and some work too as well, which is great. Everyone got into the action. Pribula, Cam Wallace, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton all had decent amount of yards. And Penn State looks to be ready for this Illinois matchup next week. And Illinois looks ready for Penn State, and it should be a fun one. UCLA hung in there with LSU for a little bit, but then toward the end really did not put up a showing worth mentioning. But, the first half was pretty good. UCLA stuck with a top 17 LSU team, and really they hung in there. So I'm happy for the JV UCLA team sticking in there. I really don't think UCLA is going to be that good this year, but kudos for them for sticking in there. Yes, they did lose by 17 points. By the end, they got doubled up, but that was just LSU kind of running up the score a bit. So good on them. Rutgers beat Virginia Tech in a tight one, a 3-point game. Rutgers employed what they did best and played Big Ten ball. Monangai had 26 carries, a touchdown, and 84 yards on the ground. And then Sammy Brown, the fifth, excuse me, whoa, five, had 14 carries as well. So you combine those 30 carries for 144 yards on the ground, combined Monangai and Brown. And Ethan Kaliakmanis got in there throwing for 270. And the defense, couple holes here and there, but I think that they're going to be very good as well going forward. Rutgers, as we've detailed, schedule is really easy, and in the preseason, I detailed that this Virginia Tech game will mean a lot for their season, whether things will go really well for them or will just be okay for them. And they did come out on top in this game. They have Washington next Friday night game on Fox. Then they have Nebraska. Then they have Wisconsin, and we have to get there first before we talk about that. All right, next game, Northwestern lost to Washington. Northwestern really is kind of a pathetic team right now. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Northwestern is not a good football team at all. They don't have a stadium that they play in, and they can't even do anything on offense, on defense. They're letting Washington score 24 and just beat the crap out of them, even though I don't think Washington is that good of a team. Northwestern passing, Jack Lausch went for 53 yards, no touchdowns, two interceptions. His QBR was 4.0. Now, that's good in school to have a 4.0, at Northwestern especially. But to have a QBR of 4.0, come on, guys. We got to do a little bit better than that. It's just a pitiful box score when you look at it. On Washington's side, though, a little bit of positivity here. Will Rogers played really well in this game. His QBR was up near the 70s, which is pretty darn good. Completion percentage up there, went 24-28 for 223 yards. The rushing attack, Jonah Coleman was pretty good on the ground, 15 carries for 67 yards and a touchdown. And just an all-around good showing by Washington. It's really easy to look good against Northwestern, but hey, if you're Washington, you'll take every win you can get because I'm not sure how many they're going to have. Iowa beat Minnesota 31-14. Iowa, really a convincing win here, while only having Cade McNamara pass for 62 yards. Caleb Johnson went for 200 yards on the ground, averaged 9.8 per carry. This dude is insane. 3 touchdowns, long of 40, 21 carries. It's insane how much that dude is carrying this team right now because Cade McNamara is so bad. It's insane right now. Really, there's no receiving stats at all since there were only 62 yards passing for him. The defense clamped down as usual, making Max Brosmer, FCS Max, throw 2 interceptions. I've always said it since the beginning of the season and before the season, Minnesota's not going to be a very good team because they have an FCS quarterback playing for them, and they just really don't have enough depth to compete. And they're starting to show on the depth, but it's kind of always shown with Max Brosmer. You during the UNC game. By the way, UNC does not look good right now. Another story for another day. But you go back to that UNC game, Max Brosmer did not look good. And you go into these other games, and yeah, he does look good against Rhode Island, but who cares? And the first game since the UNC game that's mattered, they get clobbered. Max Brosmer throws 2 interceptions. Yeah, his QBRs was about 50, which is not good. It's not 4.0, but it's not, great at all. He did throw for 200 yards, which is pretty good, but when you're down by so much, yeah, you're going to have some inflated numbers. Rushing, Darius Taylor and Marcus Major both combined for about 67 yards, excuse me. And then receiving, Daniel Jackson, their leading receiver, one of their only receivers, probably their best receiver, went for a buck, 112 yards receiving. An all-around great showing by Iowa. The last 2 games were non-cons that some middle of the Big Ten teams lost in a close fashion in the case of Michigan State. Michigan State lost this one 23-19, so they did cover their spread, which was, I think, 6.5, but they did end up losing to Boston College, who's now 3-1. Michigan State, Aiden Childs threw 3 interceptions. This is what we got to... I really have to make a video just on Aiden Childs. If you want that, comment that down below. The dude throws 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. He's averaging like 3 interceptions a game. which is crazy to me because he's a crazy talented QB. And he did throw for 240 yards and he kept his team in the game. But it's just crazy to me that this is happening with Aiden Childs. So, Boston College ends up winning that one. Then a real surprise one for me. Oregon State blew the crap out of Purdue 38-21. And I thought Purdue would do a little better, but then when you look at the box score, and Hudson Card only threw for 56 yards, which is insane again. What is it with these Big Ten quarterbacks just not doing very well? Purdue's offense is an air raid style of offense, and that he goes out and throws 56 yards passing, his QBR is 15. Now, it seems like they may have changed philosophies because Devin Mockabee ran for 170 yards on the ground. But man, it's really hard to change your philosophy like this and win. Case in point, they lost by 17 points. You can't just do that. All right, that wraps it up for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. The updated Quick Talk poll will be coming out soon. Like and subscribe, comment, do all that stuff, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.